Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, the black box of broken cars. We are here with my 1989 Honda Prelude, and it is just not done yet. As you can tell from the introduction, I've got a little bit of noise coming out of the rear end. Not only that, but the result of my suspension debacle has left my car pulling a little bit to the right. So we're going to take a look at both of these issues today. First things first is going to be the alignment issue. And the reason I want to take care of the alignment before the brakes is because I want to focus on the parts that I touched. And if I start messing around with the brakes, that means that becomes another variable in this car being out of alignment. The reason it's out of alignment is because I changed the tie rod end. We're going to take a look at that first. I've already made an adjustment to it, but I'm going to take you through the process, and then we're going to go out for a drive and see if this all worked out. And if not, well, I guess I just have to try again. And I'm just going to keep trying until I get it straight enough where it doesn't bother me, where I can hold the wheel straight and the car doesn't want to make a U-turn on me on the freeway. And then once we're done with that, we're going to replace the rear brakes because I actually looked at the rear brakes about 2 years ago, and I thought, well, maybe I should replace them, but I determined that I can get a few more miles out of them. But since the pandemic, I have not been driving this car, and in fact, this car has been mostly parked on unlevel ground, which meant that I had to engage that parking brake for the better part of a year. And I think that is why the rear brake sounds like, Jesus, it sounds like, a train horn. It sounds awful. So we're definitely going to replace that. I have the new rotors already. The pads, strangely enough, are under lifetime warranty at AutoZone. So I'm going to be hitting up AutoZone for replacement pads. I discovered that while I was driving down the freeway. And normally when you're driving straight down a straight road, the wheel's like this. You know, straight. But I had to hold the wheel like this to keep driving. The reason I had to hold the steering to the left a little bit was because the front wheel was pointing that way. And when we go into the car, we're going to see that the tie rod end connects to the steering knuckle behind the wheel bearing. And that is why the wheel is pointing just ever so slightly to the right, because the tie rod end is a little bit shorter. So all we have to do is kind of do a DIY alignment just to get it pointing straight as an arrow again. We're going to go under there, and we're going to adjust the toe. I believe it's the toe. That's what it's called, right? We're gonna adjust it so that the tie rod end is just a little bit more out as opposed to in, so that it points straight and I can keep the wheel straight. This is something you can do without taking the wheel off. You can do this on the ground with the car up on a jack stand. Use a jack stand. Don't get under a jack. Seriously, don't get under a jack. Be safe. I know people who have died when their car fell on them. Please trust me on this. Anyway, with your car safely on a jack stand, all you really got to do is crack this nut here, and then you're looking for, the squared section of the tie rod, and you're going to twist it. And in this case, this needs to go out a little bit, so I believe I am going to be loosening it rather than tightening it, because tightening it will bring it closer. Tightening it will bring it in, loosening it will push it out. So I'm going to just do one single rotation and see what happens. And while I'm under here, I don't know what the hell I did there, but I'm going to spray some fresh undercoating in that spot there, because that's pretty gnarly. I must have hit a rock or something. We're on a little bit of a more straight road, and the wheel seems to be doing pretty good. It's not pulling itself away. Unfortunately, I got nothing but turns up ahead. I mean, I let the wheel go and it's not trying to U-turn on me, so that's a huge plus. I think I have it close enough that I can drive this car without going insane. And then maybe I can fix another broken car before this car breaks again. But maybe not. Are you gonna stop? No, you're not. Okay. Really, I'm hoping I don't have too many problems with this car, at least until I can finish the Miata and get some work done on the Jeep, because I put so much into this car. I think it's time that I get a few miles out of it. And also, these other projects are expensive. I got things I have to spend money on, like the AC compressor for the Miata and all the other stuff the Miata needs. Brakes, the frame rail fix, clutch, the rear end, suspension bushings. All of these things are just going to cost me a fortune to fix on this car, and that means I have to spread out the work over time because I can't afford to buy all the parts all at once. So I need to get that car to a point where I can actually drive it. Even if it's a terrible experience, if I can drive it, that means I can use it in a pinch, and that means I can move it around in my yard and fix other things. Like, I want to use that space that the Miata is currently occupying for fixing cars. And that's what I'm doing with the Miata. But I'm also fixing cars in the space next to it, which kind of sucks. I'd really like to do the work on the rear end of the Jeep, but I can't. I am just not comfortable getting that deep into doing that work without having more than one car on the road. So I need this car and the Miata, and then I'll do the rear disc brake conversion on the Jeep. So any job that I take on while this Miata is on jack stands has to be kind of relatively quick, or at least not that big of a deal. I mean, I say that, and that was the plan for this car, but then it ended up being a very big deal. Well, you have the rear brake caliper apart, and there's the e-brake cable. I had to remove that in order to access the bolts for the caliper proper. I took it off. I also took the rotor off, and here are the results. It's pretty interesting. So the front, well, the outside facing part of the rotor is pretty unremarkable. In fact, this looks pretty new. But then when I flip it around, here's what's going on. I'm willing to bet that this is why it's making the horrible noise. For some reason, the pad didn't contact all the way through. I wonder if that has anything to do with the car sitting with the e-brake on. I'm not entirely sure. But here's the pad that mated to that. It's very interesting. It looks like the pad is either in crooked, or I don't. Maybe I installed it incorrectly. I don't know, but definitely very interesting that it would do this. Can't imagine how I could have screwed up installation of brake pads. That would literally be a first for me, and I've done lots of brake jobs. But I honestly, since this car sat for so long with the e-brake engaged, and I'm having issues with every car that I left parked for a while with the e-brake engaged, I'm wondering if that's what caused this. Let me know if you have any thoughts on this, because this is very curious. Luckily, these pads do carry a lifetime warranty, and I will be taking them in to honor that warranty. The rotors don't. because I most likely bought the rotors from Rock Auto, which is exactly where I bought the new ones that I'm about to put in. You know what I like about disc brakes? They're so simple. There's nothing to it. I got this driver's side on in about 15 minutes. Same with the passenger side. Not much to it. All I had to do was take the caliper off, take the rotor off, and put the rotor back on and put the caliper back on with the new pads. Here's the tools I used. No big deal, not very many things. The rear caliper did require this little doodad here, and that's because it had the big slots in the middle, and you're supposed to twist it to get it to retract into the caliper. Some people hate it. I think it's just fine. It's certainly better than a giant screwdriver. Alright, let's see if this thing makes a horrible noise. So far, so good. Yep, that seems to have fixed it. I mean, I did put new pads and rotors in after all. Oh, it's still making a little bit of a noise. Interesting. Alright, let's see if this thing makes a horrible noise. So far, so good. Yep, that seems to have fixed it. I mean, I did put new pads and rotors in after all. Oh, it's still making a little bit of a noise. Interesting. I'm definitely getting a scraping sound from my brakes. But it might be my front brakes. But my front brakes are brand new. I did my front brakes and the rear brakes at the same time. This sucks. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. I'm gonna have to take the calipers off and find out. But I believe I can take the pads out without having to take the whole thing apart. I believe these Willwood calipers are really easy to service. So I guess we'll find out. This car just cannot stand to not be the center of attention. Really? Really? This is my life. Well, I thought that simply changing the pads and rotors and re-greasing the caliper pins would have done the job, but I was wrong. So I'm still making the concerto of crappiness when I back up, and I see that I've got that amazing wear pattern forming up right away. I have only put 4 miles on this car, so I'm going to try just replacing the caliper and put it back together with the same pads and the same rotors. Well, we're going to judge the pads once we see them, but that's my plan. If I have to replace the pads, it's no big deal. They're under warranty at both AutoZone and now also at O'Reilly. So I could just take them back and replace them at whoever has them available, which is, I guess, a benefit. And again, like with only 4 miles, there's no wear on this, no real wear. So hopefully, just changing out the caliper will do the job. And after a week of waiting, I've got the new caliper. Of course, I ordered it from Rock Auto, which means I got a new magnet and, more importantly, a rebuilt caliper. I believe there is a core charge on this, and I'll be able to return it using the same box once I get the old one out. And I believe it's like $15 that they'll give me back, just like going to O'Reilly or AutoZone, except it's about $45 cheaper. All right, the rear caliper is installed. My wife helped me bleed the brakes. And the good news is I'm pretty sure I did solve a legitimate problem. That wear pattern is very alarming for brakes. The bad news is I did not solve my concerto of crappiness because it is most definitely coming from the front wheel. I had the wheel off the ground while I was putting the rear brake back together, and I believe this is the dust shield touching the rotor. I could be wrong, but I guess there's only one way to find out. Found it. Right there. Just get the light in a little bit better, but you can see that is touchy of the dust shield on the rotor. And it's not doing anything crazy obvious because it's touching on the very, very edge. So that's why I didn't notice any weird wear patterns. So all I gotta do is pull this back and it should be good. You can see I've had issues with this dust shield before. So I am not at all surprised. So why don't I just fix that and my problem will be solved. Thankfully, that fixed the sound. So now I can roll into Radwood without being embarrassed every time I go into reverse. And I fixed a real problem with the rear brake. Thank you all for watching, and the next time you see this car, it will be out in the sun at the Honda headquarters on November 20th at the Radwood Auto Show. See you there.